Hey everyone, Dennis Chang. Welcome to another video. You may notice a little change in scenery here because I am finally in Japan after 2 years of waiting. I was finally able to leave Taiwan. Things are starting to gradually open up. So I'll be in Japan for the next 2 months. Then I'll head to Canada, then to the USA, then to Europe for more work, for more DC Music School work and some gigs as well. Yeah, it's really incredible to be here. This time around, I was not able to bring an instrument, but the fine folks at JES International from Nagoya, Japan, sent me this incredible Godin guitar, Fifth Avenue. Not only did they send me this guitar, they also sent me a practice amp, a Phil Jones practice amp. And what can I say? I'm so deeply grateful to them, not just to them, but to everyone thus far during the pandemic who has been incredibly generous with me, like AT guitars, stringphonic guitars from Japan. I'll be making more videos talking about this stuff at some point. But yeah, a lot of people have helped me during these past 2 years. It was really difficult. I really had to change a lot of things just to adapt to this new world. But the help that I received from these people, I just can't say thank you enough. So thank you so much. And what I love about JES International is that not only do they provide excellent customer service, they also treat their employees very well, because it's actually really rare in East Asia. But in East Asia, there's a kind of overwork culture that exists. But at JES International, they make sure that their employees are not overworked and they respect work hours. And this is something that I really respect. Not only do they treat their customers very well, they treat artists very well, but they treat their own employees very well. So if you ever go to Japan and you find yourself in Nagoya, check them out. They have recording studios, music schools where you can take classes and whatever. And they're the official distributor for Godin guitars, Phil Jones, and many other brands. So let's get on with the content. But before that, if you could like, subscribe, or if you want to support me somehow, check out some of my courses on Sound Slice or DC Music School. Today's topic is related to the previous few videos where I've been talking about practicing. These videos are geared more towards beginners or intermediate students studying jazz guitar. A lot of the videos that you see on the internet tend to have a lot of bling when it comes to marketing. Like they have fancy words in titles showing, enclosures, diminished sixth scales, fancy arpeggios, fancy substitutions. I think all those things are really wonderful. But from the perspective of someone who's just starting out, who's learning, I think some of these marketing buzzwords, it kind of normalizes, how do I say, it contributes to the myth that jazz is something extremely complex. Now, jazz can, of course, be complex, but it's not necessarily as complex as you might think it is. And there are certain forms of jazz, in my opinion, that are really not complicated at all. And what I want to do with these videos is offer you this other perspective without dismissing what others are doing, of course, but just to show you that there's this whole other world where I don't have to resort to using fancy words just to get a point across. And hopefully that will give you a little bit of hope or maybe even motivation to pursue jazz. Because I say this because I know many people who give up because they say it's too hard. But then they come to me for like a session or two, and then suddenly they're motivated again because they realize it's not necessarily as hard as they had been led to believe. So today's topic is about musicality, phrasing. These are extremely subjective topics, but I'm not here to tell you what's musical or what's the correct way to phrase. If you watched any of my previous videos, it's more about the philosophy. And I want to give you things to think about that will definitely contribute towards being more musical. The first thing we're going to talk about when it comes to musicality is to learn to play something in a musical way. What do I mean by that? Let's just take a simple melody, like All the Things You Are. And especially with regards to the guitar, or any instrument for that matter, what I often notice a lot of students, and sometimes even professionals, don't have a good sound or don't have good time. I would suggest that when you play a melody, you try to play in such a way that you express the melody in as musical a way as possible, even if you're playing really, really simple. Because a lot of guitar players tend to think, okay, all you can do is play downstrokes and upstrokes. So, but there are certain things you can do. Like you can learn to pick here for this soft sound. You can pick here. You can pick here for a harsher sound. And you have to decide for yourself. Then what you can do a free stroke, or you can do a rest stroke. And then with the left hand, okay, they say in jazz guitar that you don't really do vibrato. For the most part, traditionally, it's kind of true that you don't tend to do the rock and roll kinds of vibrato, that kind of stuff. But you can do a subtle vibrato. And even George Benson used a slightly wider vibrato. But these are things to think about. So, see, I did this ornament too. So I did this across two strings, or you can do with a little slide. See what I did? This little shift. So just being able to play a melody in a musical way with both the right and left hands, it contributes a lot to the listener experience. I often notice beginners, they just like play melody, okay, just downstroke or upstroke. But no, there's so much you can do with this hand and this hand. So give it a try. You can also play with the duration of the notes. Longer, more legato, shorter, staccato, etc. Let's see what happens. I would suggest that you find a way to record yourself playing the melodies in different ways by changing how you attack the strings, like the note duration, rest strokes, playing here, playing here, playing here, doing on one string, doing on two strings, doing on different octaves, adding vibrato, slides, ornaments like etc. So the point that I'm making is play what you want to play, but try to play it well, play it beautifully. And You can do this with melodies. All the Things You Are, Autumn Leaves, There Will Never Be Another You, etc. Give it a try and you'll be surprised at how much it can greatly enhance your musicality. Okay, let's move on to the next topic, which is about phrasing. This is a vast and subjective topic. I'm not here to tell you what is good and not good phrasing because due to the subjective nature of the topic, and I do have a course on my SoundSlice page, and you can find the link in the description box, where I talk about swing and phrasing. And again, because this is so subjective, I'm not here to tell you what swings and what's good phrasing. But I always use a historical approach. That is, I explain to you what other people have done, and I've noticed certain patterns, and I want to share these with you so that hopefully it will give you some sort of idea. I want you to think about these things so that when you're listening to music the next time, you can listen to the music with what I'm going to show you in mind. When we teach jazz improvisation, we focus so much on what scales can we play, what licks can we play, what arpeggios can we play, all that. Again, nothing wrong with that. But rarely do teachers ever talk about phrasing. And one really good way to study phrasing is to look at how melodies are composed. So for example, a 2-5-1 might not just be a 2-5-1. When you look at a chart, let's say we're in the key of A flat, All the Things You Are. You see B flat minor, E flat 7 to A flat. And you learn to recognize 2-5-1s everywhere, but they're not necessarily always equal in terms of phrasing. What do I mean? So let's just look at All the Things You Are to start with. The phrasing goes like so. If you look at the melody, F minor, which is the 6th chord, da, dee. That's kind of like the first statement. So actually, the 6 and the 2 go together. And then the 5 and the 1 go together. So within the 6-2-5-1, there is a 2-5-1, but when we think of 2-5-1, we tend to think of them as being together. But in this case, based on the phrasing, it's actually 6-2-5-1. So da, 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 resolution. Now, just because the melody is composed that way doesn't mean that the phrasing has to be that way all the time. But it gives you a different phrasing option than to play like your typical 2-5-1 phrase over the just plug and play. Of course, you can do that, but you can phrase another way. You can put the 6 and the 2 together. So you can come up with a phrase. Right? So that's what I mean when I say that not all 2-5-1s are necessarily equal in terms of phrasing. The same thing happens in Fly Me to the Moon. So da 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 da. So basically you always have these chord pairs that are being connected. So 6 to the 2, 5 to the 1, etc. Let's look at Autumn Leaves, which is an interesting chord progression. Like if you just look at the chords alone, it's very standard. 2, 5, 1, then 4, then after modulation. I'm hoping you know Autumn Leaves if you don't learn it. But if you look at the melody, with regards to the way the chord chart, the melody is displaced. It's over the bar line phrasing. Then F. Then E flat. Not only is it over the bar line phrasing, but it's often starting on beat 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. Of course, you can displace the rhythm a little bit so it doesn't necessarily start on beat 2. Let's look at All of Me. So you have one phrase on the C chord, and then a little connecting phrase over the bar line phrasing. So here the phrasing is starting on beat 1. Then over the bar line phrasing. Over the bar line phrasing that means that the phrase starts before the next chord change. So and then a new phrase starts on B1. And then over the bar line phrasing. Delayed resolution. Or A7 if you want to, D minor. Then over the bar line phrasing. So the melody, the phrasing is very interesting in this song. It's very consistent, but there's an interesting mix of phrasing there. So what does this mean? It means that when you're soloing, one thing that you can think about is the harmonic rhythm, that is the rate at which the chords are changing. So in the case of All the Things You Are, it's usually 1 bar per chord. In the case of All of Me, it's two bars per chord till the very end where it's 1 bar. And then you consider the harmonic rhythm, then you also consider which chords go together in terms of phrasing. So for example, when I gave that example of Fly Me to the Moon, the first 2 chords, it's in pairs. And then you think about this, and then in your solo you try to express yourself following these principles. And let me just repeat, you don't necessarily have to follow the exact phrasing of the melody, but it's an alternative way of thinking. Furthermore, you also want to do it in such a way that it doesn't sound forced. It shouldn't sound contrived. And this will require a lot of thinking and listening on your part. When you listen to your favorite artist, pay attention to how they phrase. So basically, your solos don't always have to start on beat 1. They can start a little bit later, or they can start a little bit earlier, which would be over the bar line phrasing. And one of the best examples of over the bar line phrasing that I can think of is Django Reinhardt's Minor Swing from 1937. It's full of over the bar line phrasing and phrases. I could be wrong, but I think they never start on beat 1. It's almost always over the bar line phrasing, starting around beat 2 and 3, even from the start. So A minor to D minor, and that's one phrasing that's over the bar line. And then still on D minor, still on E7, A minor. So check that solo out and pay attention to the phrasing. You'll notice that he rarely starts on beat 1, and it's almost always over the bar line phrasing. If you can start to listen to your favorite artist with this idea in mind, I think it will greatly contribute to your musicality. And hopefully, as you think about it, you'll somehow learn to absorb it in a natural way, so that you're not always doing the same thing in terms of phrasing. And again, there are no rules, but just think about it. And that's why I also think it's a very, very good idea to learn a lot of songs and to learn the melodies and to play them well, but also be aware of the phrasing of the melody. Just for example, Blue Bossa. So the C minor and F minor go together. Then the D minor, the 2-5-1 go together. Then here the 2-5-1 go together as well. Lullaby Birdland. etc. You can learn so much about phrasing by just doing this exercise or just thinking about it. Good luck!